Two men, Reggie and CC, sit on a bench at the Port Authority bus terminal, New York City, talking politics. The president has been acting like a fox in the Far East, enough to make them think he is crazy enough to do all kinds of crap. He is flashing his nuclear bombs, saying do not mess with him, or he will drop that big mofo on them, you know how it is. Or was, because they're not talking about you know who and now, but Richard Nixon in 1971. It's obvious when you see what these two, and everyone else, are wearing. The Deuce Sky Atlantic, David Simon and George Pelicano's new series about the sex and emerging porn industry in 70s New York, is not just an extraordinary creation, it's an extraordinary recreation of the area around Times Square nearly half a century ago. Not shiny and nostalgic, but dirty and real. Pimps and prostitutes, honking horns and horny hunkies, everybody, even the guy in the Winston billboard, smoking. You can smell it, the trash piled up by the side of the streets, the corruption and danger, but also the thrill of that time, and that place New York at its best and worst. The two men talking politics are dressed like, and are, pimps, waiting to swoop on the newly arrived out-ofteners, such as Lori Emily Meade, just in from Minnesota on a Greyhound. The one called CC Gary Carr has soon sweet-dicked her into his customized Cadillac. Candy Maggie Gyllenhaal, known as Eileen to her mom and mommy to her little boy, doesn't need a pimp. Nobody makes money off my pussy but me, she tells a prospective manager, firmly. Quite right. Frankie James Franco is an impulsive gambler and a rogue. His twin brother Vincent, also James Franco, has a little more moral fiber and works 7 nights a week to feed the kids. Frankie's creditors sometimes muddle them. Me too, actually. Vinny gets an early forehead scar from a pistol whipping in the opening scene, which helps. But they wear the same mustache and hair, and dress similarly. It's going to be hard when the scar fades. Frankie has the swagger, Vinny the thoughts. Franco differentiates subtly. Soon they are both going to be involved with the sex industry too. Then there are mobsters and cops, and a privileged English literature student who knows fancy words, and a bit about feminism too, plus there will be a journalist. It's typical of Simon and Pelicano's, who, of course, collaborated on The Wire and Treem, a cast of fabulous, colorful, super high-definition characters whose own streets and avenues intersect and crisscross and become a part of something bigger. And then struggle to be heard amid the roaring and screaming. It takes some getting into, there is so much going on, so many characters and storylines. It can seem bewildering, like stepping off the Greyhound bus into another world yourself. A brilliant one, though, real and alive, that will swallow you up, and then go on resounding like Curtis Mayfield's voice does in the perfectly chosen theme song, If There's a Hell Below, We're All Going to Go. The Deuce is not always comfortable viewing, and human suffering and misery are never far away. The sexual violence, especially, is virtually unwatchable. And I was getting to enjoy CC's company, until he exercises power in its most brutal, basest, vilest form, the power over someone else's body. That is what it's all about, of course, power. Physical power, sexual power, the power of money, and of authority, political power. As Reggie on the bench said, it's not so different, what they're doing on the fringes with their knives and guns, flash clothes and cars, and what the president is doing with a little bit of diplomacy, and then a big show of strength, flashing his big bombs, carrots and sticks. Nixon's a pimp too. It may even have some resonance today. Here is one on the topic of today, Horizon being transgender. BBC Two. A bunch of people who don't associate with the gender assigned to them at birth talk frankly, openly, and helpfully about it. Such as Charlotte, a transgender woman, with her colleagues at the train engineering factory where she works. And Jamie, a transgender man, with his family. Jamie's mom did grieve a bit for her daughter, and his dad had problems telling the grandparents, but now they've all come to terms with it and are happy. They talk about what it is like to transition, biologically, psychologically, socially. There is some interesting gender identity science. And then it's off to San Francisco, where Dr. Marcy Bowers, herself a transgender woman, is performing gender confirmation surgery. Then we see body parts being sliced open, and that is as far as I got, I'm afraid. Brilliant that it can happen, and that these lovely people can talk about it so well and openly, so that there is better understanding. The surgical process, though, I don't want to see.